We have a new pool and we can't get our water balanced. Our salt level is reading 42 to 4350 and our chlorine is consistently low. We can't seem to find an answer on what to do or how to balance this. I also guess we don't know how long the system is running to make chlorine.
Right, okay. So let's educate on a salt system and how salt creates chlorine. When you dissolve sodium chloride in H2O water and then pass it through the titanium plates of the unit itself that creates chlorine, you're creating chlorine gas, Cl2, and most often than not it's sodium hydroxide and maybe a few other components, but that's basically it. The way that a system is built, let's say you have an IC40, a Pentair IC40. I don't know which salt system you have, but they all work the same in this respect. An IC40 is the perfect unit for a 40,000 gallon pool, as long as the IC40 is running 24 hours a day at 100% production. So if you have a 20,000 gallon pool and you have an IC40 on the pool, you have to run it at 100% for at least 12 hours to make adequate chlorine. So there's always a possibility that you're not running the system long enough or the unit isn't big enough. If you had an IC20, which is good for a 20,000 gallon pool, that means it'll produce enough chlorine for a pool running 24 hours a day at 100% production will create enough chlorine for a 20,000 gallon pool. So you need to look at that first and foremost. After that, some of the things you could think about would be water chemistry. If your stabilizer is too low, and basically cyanuric acid, which is a stabilizer, it helps bind the chlorine to the water so it doesn't burn off so rapidly. Without a proper stabilizer or cyanuric acid level, your chlorine will burn off very rapidly when it is hit by the sun, and you won't get proper reading and you won't get proper chlorination. So either I would check, make sure your stabilizer is good, stabilizer is a cyanuric acid, or look at the unit itself and figure out how long it technically has to run bare minimum to produce the needed chlorine. And likely what you're going to have to do is run it longer at a higher percentage, and then likely, as long as there's nothing wrong with the unit itself, if you run it longer and at a higher percentage, it'll be able to create the chlorine you need.
What about sunlight and stabilizer?
Well, certainly sunlight is going to destroy the chlorine in the water very rapidly, and that's why you use a stabilizer. A stabilizer helps bind the chlorine to the water and prevent the sun from burning it off. So if there's too much, if you don't have enough stabilizer in the pool, which is your cyanuric acid, then the chlorine gas, as it is spread into the pool, is very rapidly burned off by the sun, and you never really get a good reading. So you need to make sure that that stabilizer level is high enough, and then also make sure that your system is running long enough to produce the chlorine it needs, and make sure that the system is even creating chlorine, because sometimes, it's electronics. There's always possibility that there's something wrong with the unit itself.